You think you're in love, you think you're being noble, romantic, loyal. But what if I told you you're still sitting in the cave, chained, not by her, but by your own illusions of her? You see, Plato never wrote dating advice, but he gave you something far more brutal. A mirror so clear it burns your eyes when you dare to look into it. And what that mirror shows, it's not her curves, her smile, her charm. It's the wild horse in your soul that drags you to ruin. This video isn't about blaming women. It's about seeing them, not as goddesses, not as villains, but as mirrors. And if you can stand still long enough to face that reflection, you'll unlock the power to rule your own life. Let me tell you a story. There was a man, smart, successful, disciplined, until she walked in. He started skipping gym sessions to text her back. He dropped work projects to plan her birthday. He even broke his own values just to keep her around. Sound familiar? He didn't lose her. He lost himself. So here's the real question. What if every time you bend your values to win her, you're not loving her, you're betraying you? If any of this feels like your story, if you've ever looked in the mirror and wondered, how did I become this guy? Then stay with me, because the fire you need is waiting inside you. And the chains, they were never on your hands. They were wrapped around your mind. If that hits you in the gut, drop a comment and write, "I've seen the cave." Let's begin. Imagine this. You're in a cave, not a physical one, but a mental prison. You've been chained there since birth, and all you've ever seen are shadows dancing on the wall, whispers, silhouettes, flashes of something beautiful. They call it love. They call it destiny. But it's just shadows. Plato wrote about this, not just as a myth, but as a metaphor for how most men live. He described prisoners who stare at illusions all their lives, mistaking them for truth. Now what if I told you, one of those shadows is a woman, not the real woman, not her soul, not her complexity, but the idea of her, painted by movies, songs, culture, an image so perfect, so intoxicating, you never think to question it. You never even see her. You see your hope, your hunger, your loneliness, and you project it onto her face. That's not love, that's illusion. And Plato warned us, the man who mistakes illusion for reality is not just foolish, he is enslaved. Here's the brutal truth. She smiles, and you call it connection. She pulls away and you chase, thinking it's fate. But you're not chasing her, you're chasing a story you wrote in your own darkness. That story says, she's the one. She completes me. She'll fix everything. But stop. Ask yourself, is it her you love, or is it the version of yourself you wish existed in her eyes? This is how the cave keeps you blind. It wraps your self-worth around her approval. It convinces you that her attention or your value. And every time she gives you a glance, a laugh, a text, you think you've found the light. But Plato knew better. He said the truth doesn't comfort you. It shatters you, it burns when you see it for the first time. That's why most men stay in the cave, because stepping out means questioning every fantasy you ever believed. It means admitting, I never really knew her. I just wanted her to make me feel enough. And that, my friend, is the first flicker of freedom, because once you realize you've been loving a shadow, you can finally look for the light. So I'll ask you this, when you fell for her, did you see a woman or did you see your own reflection? If you're ready to find out, drop it in the comments. This is just the beginning. She smiles, and your world shifts. Suddenly your chest lifts, your brain buzzes, your whole being lights up. And you whisper to yourself, she must be special. But stop. Ask yourself, what did she do? Nothing. She smiled, and you gave her your heart. This is not love. This is a triggered response, a habit built in the dark corners of the cave, where any flicker of warmth feels like a sunrise. You've been starving for years, starving for attention, validation, approval, and in that desert, even a drop tastes like heaven. So when she texts back with a, you think she's the one. When she says, I had fun today, you think it's fate. But really, it's just dopamine, a hit, a fix, and like any addict, you chase more. You plan your day around the next hit. You measure your worth by her reactions. And this is the prison, Not bars, not chains, but a system inside your mind. That confuses being seen with being loved. She didn't trap you. She doesn't even know the power she holds. You handed her the remote control to your emotions and called it romantic. Plato warned us. The untrained soul will mistake pleasure for truth, and when she makes you feel alive, you assume she is your life. But you're not in love. You're in reaction. You're high on hope, addicted to attention, and drunk on illusions. Let's be honest. How often have you felt heartbreak over someone you barely even knew? That's not a broken heart. That's a broken pattern. You were hoping she'd finally make you feel enough, but here's the bitter pill. No one can do that for you. Not your mother, not your mentor, not the girl with the soft voice and perfect smile. That's your job, so what do? You rebuild. You notice when your heart races and ask, why do I care so much about her approval? You feel the pull, but you pause. You teach yourself that a smile is just a smile, not a destiny, not a promise, not a sign from the universe, because when you can look at her, feel the surge, and still stay grounded, then, my friend, you are free. If you've ever mistaken validation for love, write "I see it now" in the comments. What if love isn't the cure? What if love, at least the way you felt it, isn't noble or holy or even healthy? Plato didn't romanticize love. He called it by its true name, madness, not evil, not corrupt, but a divine kind of madness. One that possesses the soul, that hijacks your reason, that turns even wise men into worshippers of shadows. He saw it as a force sent by the gods, not to bless you, but to test you. In the Symposium, he describes love not as peace, but as longing, lack, desire. And desire left unchecked becomes obsession. But modern men, we've been taught to chase this madness, to dive into it head first, to call it destiny, to see the butterflies as signs from heaven, so when she walks by and your stomach flips, you think it's magic. It's not. It's your wild horse breaking free. Plato's metaphor in Phaedrus speaks volumes. Your soul is a chariot pulled by two horses, one noble seeking truth and order, one wild chasing pleasure and chaos. And you're the charioteer, the driver, responsible for both. But when the wild horse sees her, smells her perfume, feels her touch, you let go of the reins, and the chariot crashes. That's not love. That's madness in disguise. Because what do most men do when in love? They abandon discipline, they forget their mission, they betray themselves in tiny daily ways, all in the name of romance. But here's the bitter truth. If love makes you weaker, it's not love, it's addiction. And Plato wasn't against love. He was against losing yourself to it. He believed love could lead you toward truth, if you mastered it. If you used it as a fire to purify, not a drug to sedate. So next time you fall in, ask yourself, is this awakening something sacred? Or is it a slow surrender into chaos? Because if you keep mistaking lust for loyalty, obsession for intimacy, longing for purpose, then love won't elevate you, it will erase you. You want to know the difference between divine love and delusion? Divine love sharpens your vision. Delusion blinds it. So here's your mirror moment. Is she lighting the path to your higher self or dragging you into the fog? If you've ever felt consumed by love, if you've looked back and asked, who was I during all that? Comment, clarity over chaos. You think she's playing you. You think she's calculating every move, every smile, every silence, every message seen but not replied. You think she's the manipulator. But what if she's just a mirror? What if the real player is the weakness inside you? Plato once said, the worst of all deceptions is self-deception. And this is the most brutal realization a man can face. She didn't trap you. She just reflected the traps you never noticed in yourself. You felt empty. She made you feel wanted. You felt unseen. She looked at you. You felt weak. She gave you the illusion of strength through desire. And in that reflection, you saw the version of you wanted to believe was real. Confident, desired, powerful. But it wasn't her who built that illusion. You did. She just held the mirror. Let's go deeper. Why does it hurt so much when she pulls away? Why do you collapse when she disapproves? Why do you obsess over what she thinks of you? Because her reactions, Mirror the fragility you've been ignoring. You don't want her approval. You want confirmation that you matter, that you're enough, that someone sees you, and as long as she sees you, you feel real. But that's the danger. She becomes your proof of worth. Your reflection becomes your reality. This is why Plato warned against external dependence, because the moment someone else defines your value, you've already lost control of your life. She doesn't need to be malicious. She doesn't need to scheme. She just needs to exist as your measuring stick, and you'll destroy yourself trying to reach it. So how do you reclaim power? You stop using her as a mirror, and you start building your own reflection. You define who you are, what you stand for, and how you want to show up, with or without her gaze. Because the man who sees himself clearly no longer fears being seen by others. And here's the secret. When you no longer need her validation, you stop being controlled by her presence. So now I ask you, when you look at her, are you seeing a person, or are you just chasing your own reflection? Be honest, because clarity begins with courage. If that reflection just hit you in the gut, type, "I see through the mirror," in the comments. Inside you there is a war, not against her, not against the world, but within your own soul. Plato painted this battle clearly. He described the soul as a chariot, pulled by two horses, one noble, disciplined, drawn toward reason, truth, and legacy. The other wild, unruly, obsessed with pleasure, validation, and beauty. And you are the charioteer. You hold the reins, or at least, you're supposed to. But when she enters the picture, when her scent lingers, when her laugh dances through your chest, when her eyes say, "Come closer," the wild horse surges, it kicks, it screams, it pulls. And most men let go of the reins. You stop thinking, you stop leading, you stop being a king, and you become a slave to appetite. This is not a modern problem. Plato saw it centuries ago. Men who claim power, strength, vision, only to throw it all away and for a moment of pleasure. The wild horse doesn't whisper, it yells. Text her back now. Drive to her house. Forgive everything, just to feel something again. And the noble horse, silent, steady, it says, "Remember who you are." But that voice gets drowned out when you're high on the fantasy, when your emotions are louder than your logic. Here's the tragedy. Most men think the horse is love, but it's not. It's neediness, it's addiction dressed in romance, it's ego craving attention, and every time you follow it, you get dragged through chaos. You betray your values, you ignore your mission, you negotiate your standards, all to satisfy the part of you that still believes. She will complete you. But Plato knew better. The soul that surrenders to appetite becomes its prisoner. You want to lead, you want respect, you want unshakable clarity. Then train the horse. You do it by choosing silence over desperation, focus over flattery, discipline over desire. And when you master the reins, when both horses obey your command, and you rise, not just above her, but above every illusion that's ever controlled you. So tell me, are you guiding your chariot or being dragged by it? If you're ready to take back the reins and comment, "I hold the reins now." Let's get brutally honest. Most men today aren't free. Not because they're poor, not because they lack opportunity, but because they're owned by their impulses, their fears, and their emotional cravings. And the worst part? They call it love. They call it devotion. They call it being a good man. But Plato saw through all that noise. He wrote that no man is free who is not master of himself. You could have the world's attention, 1,000,000 followers, a fortune in the bank. But if one woman can break you with a cold stare, if one unanswered text can ruin your focus, you're not a king, you're a slave with golden cuffs. So how do you rise? How do you go from being emotionally reactive to being untouchable? You rule your soul, not by suppressing your feelings, but by confronting them, by naming your hunger, questioning your patterns, and choosing truth over comfort. Start here. The next time she ignores you, the next time she pulls back, don't chase, don't spiral, don't build fantasies about what it means. Pause, ask yourself, what part of me is reacting? What story am I telling myself? That pause, that's the first act of sovereignty. Because ruling your soul isn't about being cold, it's about being clear. It means you don't say "I love you" just to get love back. You say it because it's aligned with who you are, not because you're trying to win her. It means you don't bend your mission for her mood. You don't apologize for your purpose. You don't sacrifice your standard just to keep someone from leaving. This kind of strength doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It doesn't perform. It stands, still, grounded, centered. And when she looks at you, she doesn't see a boy chasing affection. She sees a man who is whole without it. That's power. That's freedom. That's the just man Plato spoke of, the man who rules his own kingdom before ruling anything else. So ask yourself right now, are you leading your life or negotiating it? Because kings don't negotiate their values. They embody them. And once you do, you'll find that you no longer need her to see you. You see yourself. If this part lit a fire in you, drop "I am the ruler of me" in the comments. Here's the hard truth. You're not being played because she's smarter. You're not being controlled because she's cruel. You're being played because you're still playing her game. The game of chasing, the game of proving, the game of waiting for her attention to validate your existence. And here's the worst part. You know you're doing it. Every time you check your phone, every time you reread her last message, every time you lower your standards to keep her around, you feel it. That sting, that quiet voice whispering, "This isn't who I want to be." So why don't you stop? Because the game is familiar. Because you think winning it will make you feel worthy. Because you've confused her interest with your identity. But Plato warned us. The soul takes on the character of the actions it pursues. And if you keep chasing someone who disrespects your standards, if you keep folding just to keep her around, if you keep trading your values for a seat at her table, you become the man who forgets how to stand. The only way to stop being played is to stop playing. You don't win by outgaming her. You win by exiting the game entirely, by rising above the board, by seeing the patterns for what they are, by saying, "I no longer need this to feel like a man." And when you do that, when you reclaim your time, when you protect your peace, when you hold your boundaries without rage or fear, you don't just stop being played, you become unplayable. That's what true power looks like, not the power to make her chase you, the power to walk away. The power to not need the chase at all. Because once you've faced your hunger, once you've mastered your chariot, once you've looked in the mirror and said, "I choose me," the game becomes boring, predictable, beneath you. So here's your moment of choice. Will you keep playing or will you rise? If you're done being the pawn, type, "I've left the board" in the comments. History doesn't repeat itself. It reveals itself again and again. And every time an empire falls, there's one pattern that always shows up first. Men, abandoning discipline for pleasure. Plato saw it in Athens. He watched the city of thinkers and warriors decay, not because of invader, but because of indulgence. Leaders stopped leading. Warriors stopped training. Men stopped standing for truth. Why? Because they wanted approval, because they feared being disliked, because they chased validation just like modern men do. Look around today. Do you really think society is any different? You see men apologizing for their masculinity. You see fathers disconnected from their sons. You see young men glued to screens, worshipping filters instead of building futures. And why? Because they're hungry. Not for truth, not for purpose, but for approval from women, from followers, from a world that doesn't even know them. And this is where collapse begins, not with armies, but with appetites. Plato wrote that when pleasure rules over reason, a civilization eats itself from within. And what is your soul if not its own kingdom? If you can't control your urges, you can't protect your values. If you let attention become your drug, you become predictable, programmable, pathetic. That's why empires fall, not because of enemies outside, but because men stop ruling themselves. So ask yourself, are you living in a collapsing empire, or are you building one inside you? Are you the ruler or the citizen begging for comfort? Because here's the cold truth. Your personal collapse doesn't come with fire and trumpets. It comes with quiet compromises. It comes with silent surrenders. It comes when you say, "Just this once," one too many times. But the flip side is this. Every empire that collapsed can be rebuilt. And you right now can begin laying the first stone of your own, stone by stone, value by value, discipline by discipline. So I ask you, will you be the man who watches the fall, or the one who rises from it? If you choose the latter, comment, "I build my empire within." Plato didn't dream of ordinary men. He envisioned rulers, not rulers of land, but of the self. He called them philosopher kings, men who had conquered their chaos, disciplined their desires, and stood unshaken in the face of illusion. But here's the twist. That king. He's not some mythical leader. He's not born in palaces or chosen by fate. He's you, if you dare. If you dare to leave the cave, to walk away from the shadows you once called love, to look at the woman you once worshipped and no longer see a goddess, but a mirror, not with bitterness, not with hate, but with clarity. Because when you finally see clearly, you don't need revenge. You don't need to prove anything. You just rise. You become the man who no longer begs to be chosen, because you've already chosen yourself. You become the man who no longer folds for attention, because your purpose demands your loyalty. You become the man who walks alone when needed, because your values keep you company. That's the philosopher king, and he doesn't just escape the cave. He burns it down behind him. So now I'll ask you, brother, are you still chasing her smile, still hoping her love will make you whole, or are you ready to rule? Because if you've come this far, if every part of this message stirred something ancient in your blood, then it's not by accident. You're here because the king in you is waking up, and the shadows, they're starting to tremble. So rise, speak truth, walk with power, and never again surrender your soul for affection. If you're ready to rule, if you're done with games, illusions, and golden chains, comment, "I am the philosopher king."